Hello chaps. In this video, do I start off like that? Screw it, I'm leaving it in. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make your own pinch pot. So all you'll need for this technique, this ancient pottery technique, is a bit of clay to get to this stage. If you want to customize it, you will need some basic pottery tools, and you can achieve something that looks a little bit like this. It's not too intricate, it's relatively simple. I'll show you how to make exactly this pot in this video, but if you want to keep it super simple and just buy a bag of clay just to sort of test out to see if you like working with pottery, you could get some air dry clay, so it's even less daunting that you don't have to go out and find a kiln to fire your piece. You can definitely buy some air dry clay and achieve this just without any tools. You can still add a bit of detail to your piece by pressing your fingerprint into the clay while it's still wet, and still be able to get some detail. So I'm going to go through a few things though, just in case you did want to make something a little bit more detailed. I would recommend buying a few really basic wooden tools. I think I got these on Amazon for like £1 something, or maybe £2 something. You can get something similar at Hobbycraft. I think the range of the works as well. So standard like pottery tools, they don't have to be these exact ones. And then a yellow sponge. It doesn't have to be yellow, but you know, the classic pottery sponges are often yellow. If you don't want to spend money on tools, but you still want to have a bit more, a bit of help while you're making your pieces, you can use a fork, knife and a spoon. I'll show you what you can achieve with just things that you've got in your kitchen. And then what? And then a few random objects that you might have laying around the house that you can print into your clay, just so you can experiment with like textures to see if maybe you like something like that where you can carve out details. Or maybe you might want to, like, this is the top of a perfume lid and I've used it in the past to like add circular like details. I've also used a screw in the past and rolled it on my clay. So there's lots of stuff you can do with clay from just tools that you, well, not even tools, bits and bobs that you've got laying around the house. So I'm going to change the camera angle now so that you can see what I'm doing just with my hands. I'm trying to think if I'm missing it. Oh, this massive box next to me. If pottery is something that you really want to get into, or even just air dry clay, this is what I used for a while when starting off with air dry clay. It's just a handy dandy little wooden box, and you can keep all your bits in it, but the top of it you can use as like a chopping board. So something like if you're making clay things on a table that's got like a waxy surface, what you'll find is when you're rolling out clay or sculpting bits of clay, when you go to lift it up, it can stick to the table. Whereas something that's wooden without any kind of varnish, so it's quite porous. Cardboard and paper works as well. You'll find you'll have a better time. Like the clay won't stick to it. So I'd highly recommend a little box to keep your bits in. So I'm going to change the camera angle now. So time to grab your clay. Although I did forget to mention, you might also need a small little dish of water while you're working, just because some clays can dry out as you're working with them. So what you're going to do is grab a bunch of clay about the size of a tennis ball or an apple, so roughly about this shape. And then you're going to spend some time pushing it into a ball shape. You can do it a couple of ways by rolling your clay on your work surface. You can tap your clay in between your hands. You can roll your clay in between your hands, and you can cycle through each of those. So I don't tend to stick to one technique for very long, because I find that like if I just kept rolling on my work surface, eventually I just get this kind of cone shape, so that's not what I want. So I kind of cycle through, because the rolling on the work surface smooths out a lot of your clay. But what you might find is while you're trying to shape your clay, you might see some of these like cracks start to appear. If you do, not to worry, you can just move the clay over with your finger, and if it does this while you're moving your clay, you can just grab some water, shake off the excess and just rub it in. But make sure not to leave the water in like a little puddle. just move the water across all of the clay. So spend like a couple of seconds making your ball shape. It doesn't have to be too precise because we are going to be shaping it into this lovely pinch pot shape in a sec. But just so that we've got a good starting point, it needs to be a ball shape and as little of these sort of cracks as possible. So as soon as you notice them, just move them over and just use a tiny, tiny bit of water. You can sort of get rid of the excess on your sponge as well. So we're going to start off with this shape. Like we're going to start off the pinch pot technique with this shape. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to sort out your ball shape while I clean off my hands, because something I want to make note of is you can use your sponge to do this. When you get clay drying on your hands like this, so I don't know if you can see this very well, I've got little tiny bits of clay starting to dry up on my hands. It's not a huge issue, but as you're trying to shape your pot, that clay that's stuck to your hands can dent your clay pieces, and what you'll find is that some people get frustrated with that because they're constantly having to clean up those clay, those crack marks on the clay. So I try my best to just sort of wipe down my hands every so often. But if you are going to do that, your hands are a little bit wet now, so like I'm going to go just dry them off a little bit, so give you a little bit of time to finish your ball shape. So it is handy to keep a towel nearby as well as your little dish of water. So once you are happy with your ball shape, next we are going to push our thumb into our clay, but we're not going to push it all the way through. So I don't want you to like to see your thumb coming out of the other end. You're going to want to push it in about maybe just over halfway into the ball. You can do it by pushing your thumb straight in, or what I like to do initially is to give my thumb a bit of support, is sort of anchor my thumb against my fingers, just to give me a bit of leverage. So you can just push in and rotate your thumb as well, that helps. And then you can just push in a bit further. And then to release your thumb, give it a bit of a wiggle. And that's the start of your pinch pot. So this would be the opening of your pot. And then these here, I say these, this all the way around, that's going to be the wall of your pot. And then this would be the base of your pot. Excuse me. So once you're happy, once you've done your little thumbprint or thumb hole, we're going to start doing what the title of the technique is called. We're going to start pinching our pot to form the pot. So to do this, you put your thumb back inside, and then you're going to use your fingers to pinch, but I want you to do gentle pinches. I don't want you to squeeze really hard and then not enough. Like, you want to keep it sort of consistent with each pinch, and we're going to rotate the clay as we're pinching. So it's like a pinch, rotate, pinch, rotate, pinch, rotate. What I like to do, but you don't have to follow this, is I like to do one rotation of pinches, focusing on the middle section first, then the bottom section, and then the top section. So I should probably do it this way. So the middle section, the bottom section, and then the top section. So you'll see what I mean in a minute. So I'll pinch, rotate, pinch, rotate, pinch, rotate, and I'll just do this until I get a full rotation, and you know you've got a full rotation when you can see your fingerprint marks appear again. So I've done one full rotation of gentle pinches in the middle. Now I'm going to focus on the bottom and do the exact same thing. Gentle pinches while rotating the ball. And the reason I do the bottom section after the middle is because if I do the top section, so like this being the top, it can get harder then to reach the bottom of the pot after doing that. So I figured the easiest way is the middle, bottom, then top. Also, while you're pinching, again, if you notice any of these cracks start to appear, just spend a few seconds smoothing those cracks over just to get rid of them. And then carry on pinching. And then I've done one full rotation, I think. Oh no, there we go. And then don't worry if it looks kind of funky, we will be shaping our pot later, but I'm going to do one on the top of my pot, so again, this being the top, one full rotation, so gentle pinches, the same kind of pressure each time until you can see your fingerprint marks again. So the shape of my pot looks kind of funky, but I've got lots of wiggle room now to shape the pot to how I like. So before I start sort of finessing that, I just want to show you what we're kind of aiming for. So I made this just to kind of show you that this little pot, from the top, you can kind of see that the walls look pretty even. There's not like big lumps or thin spots. So when you're looking straight down at your pot, you might think, oh, okay, the walls are pretty even. But you kind of have to do it by feel. And what I sort of explain is when you're pinching, if you think of like a finger in between each pinch, that's going to be the same sort of thickness each time. Whereas if you're pinching like not very much one time and then lots the next time, they're going to be really thin when you feel your finger and thumb be closer together, and then the walls are going to be thicker when your finger and thumb are further away from each other as you're pinching. So what I mean by that is this is what we're aiming for, but this is what can happen when you pinch too much, when your finger and thumb are too close together, or when your finger and thumb are sort of too wide apart. We're aiming for roughly like a finger, maybe a little finger's worth, all the way up our pot. So if you think of when I'm pinching and rotating, I'm aiming for this and not this. I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions about this, please leave them in the comments and I'll try and do either another video explaining or I'll try my best to answer them in the comments. So as I said already, oh actually I've got some like clay starting to form on my hands, so I'm just going to get rid of that real quick because again it can deform like your pot in certain areas. So like I said, each pinch should be the same sort of thickness or the distance from your thumb and your finger, and you can kind of feel like, oh, excuse me, I can feel that in the middle I didn't pinch very hard at all, so I've got lots of clay to work with in the middle area so that my finger and thumb feel very far away in this section, whereas they feel closer together here. I don't know if that's coming through, like I don't know if you can sort of see what I mean, like my fingers are further apart, like my finger and thumb are further apart in the middle. So I'm going to go and start sort of finessing my pot and just spend a little bit of time being present and not focusing too much on other things that I've got going on in my mind. I'm just going to focus on the feeling of the clay, the distance between my finger and my thumb, or my fingers and my thumb, and just spend a bit of time now making everything nice and even. So you can move up and down now. You don't have to just stick in one area, because what I find is even if you're doing gentle pinches, if you focus too much in one area, that can be a thin spot. So just try your best to keep moving either up and down or side to side. You can use your entire like fingers, you don't just have to focus as well at the top of your fingers. You can kind of do this. Some people find it helpful as well to put your pot down and maybe use two hands at the same time. Some people find it helpful to place your pot in your hand and then do the opposite. So rather than keeping your thumb inside, putting your thumb on the outside, it might give you a better understanding of how the clay feels if you're struggling with that a little bit. Or just swapping hands can help as well. And then again, as the clay starts to dry out, you might notice that the clay will like have little small cracks. So just smooth your finger over the clay to get rid of those cracks before they get any bigger. And same as on the inside. I don't know if you can see on the inside of my pot. I don't know if it's going to focus, but there's lots of tiny cracks on the middle, on the inside. So just do the same. Use your finger to smooth out those cracks. So one question I often get asked at this stage is, how do I shape the bottom of my pot? So some people's pots might look a little bit more angular shaped, like, I don't know, pointy at the bottom. So there's a couple of ways to do it, but the two main ones I do is I either lift it up off the board and then just let it drop, just because I think it's a bit fun, or I'll just reshape it just to show you, or you can do it a little bit more gently and hold the top of your pot and then just tap a couple of times until you've got that nice flat base to your pot. What you might find though is as you're pushing down clay, you're compressing the clay. So you might find you've actually got a bit more clay to work with now. The clay has gone thicker at the bottom, so you can kind of push out the clay a bit more and give yourself a wider pot. Another question I often get asked is, how thick do I go with the walls? Do I have to go this thick, this thick? Like what would you recommend the thinnest I can go? I usually tell beginners to go no thinner than your little finger, so the width of your little finger. And I know everyone's little fingers are going to be a little bit different, but it's a rough guide. So when you can see clay sticking out the side of your little finger, so I don't know if that makes sense, if you can see clay poking out, you know you've got a little bit of wiggle room to push in that clay, and it's like roughly the size of your little finger, and you can just move your little finger and just pinch until all the walls are even all the way around. So another question I often get asked as well is, how do I make the top part flat? So some of the workshops I've done in the past, some people really like how the pot can be wonky, some people don't. So same kind of technique, some people might just want to flip it over, tap a few times, and that can flatten everything to make it nice and even. And then you've got a little bit of wiggle room to pinch a bit as well. Or say you had, let me just push it up, say you had only one side by accident higher than the rest, you can use, if you do get your basic wooden tools, you can use something called a ribbon tool, and you can use the flat edge of it just to scrape it off, so you can hold the walls of your pot to support it, and then you can just glide your tool across, taking off the clay that you need, and it leaves a nice satisfying ribbon, hence ribbon tool. So you can take that off and then you can spend a little bit of time, maybe, oh, just realised I left my sponge in my water. You can add a little bit of water to where you carved away that clay, just to smooth it out. And then another question I often get asked as well is, how do I get rid of all my fingerprint marks? Like I said, I'm a bit of a fan of fingerprints because it just gives your pot character. Like, this is a pot made by me and no one else because it's got my fingerprints in it. But I understand wanting your pot to be super smooth, because if you are wanting to make something a little bit more defined, you might want smooth walls. So you can do this by putting your pot on its side and putting it on your work surface, and then just rolling it across, and then just like lifting it up, putting it back down. And you can just do that a couple of times. If you find that your pot's going a bit wonky, you can steady it by putting your hands inside and roll it that way, because you can press down a bit on the clay as well. And this can also help get the walls nice and even as well. So I'm putting a little bit of pressure in mine. this can like stretch out your clay. It can make it a little bit taller, a little bit wider. So you can see the shape of my pot's grown a little bit since doing that. So I think I'm pretty happy with the shape of my pot now. I'm just gonna go over any of the lumps and bumps that I mentioned, like any cracks that might be forming. And it'll give you a chance to finish your pot shape as well if you haven't finished already. Okay, so that is your basic pinch pot. So if you are happy with how, oh, there's some cracks still. If you are happy with how this looks, you can leave it as is and leave it to dry. It can take a couple of days depending on where you live and how hot it is where you are. It usually takes anywhere between 48 hours to, I say 40 hours, let's do days. It takes about 2 to 5 days to dry fully. And you'll know it's dry if I show you this one. You can see that this one is much lighter in colour compared to this one. It's the same clay, but because there's lots of moisture in this, it makes the clay darker. So when your clay is nice and dry, it'll be a lot lighter in colour. It'll also be room temperature to touch. So what you might find in like a day of leaving your clay out to dry, it might look a little bit dry, but if you touch it and it feels cold, there's still water in that. So don't paint it or fire it even, if you're planning on firing your piece, until your piece is what's called bone dry. There's no water at all in it, so it's bone dry. So if you want, you can leave your piece to look like this and then you can decorate it. Or you can decorate it at this stage by using your tools. So I told you I was going to show you how to make this piece. So there's a few techniques you can do. You can definitely achieve this sort of textured look with many different tools. But I used the ribbon tool, I used the corner, and I just sort of carved away lots and lots of little ribbons. But first, before we do that, I'm going to attach these pieces first to make it easier. So to do that, I'm going to need a little bit of extra clay, so some clay from earlier. So you can just eyeball this, it doesn't have to be too precise. I'm going to kind of make a ball that I'm going to turn into like an oval shape to make this part of the nose, or like the face, I guess. So I've got like an oval, or like kind of like a sausage, I guess. So once you've got your shape, your sausagey oval shape, what you're going to need to do is flatten one side, so hold it against your surface and then tap, 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 tap. And then you've got a nice flat edge. And then we're going to do something called scoring. So scoring is when you add a bunch of lines in one direction using your needle tool, or you could use, if you don't have tools at home, you could use a fork and add a bunch of lines that way. You could use whatever tools you have access to. And then once you've done it on this piece, you're going to then figure out where you want to place it. I'm going to place mine right here, but that's not fully attached. This is just so I know where to put my score lines on my pot. So you can see here, it leaves a nice little guide mark for me to figure out where I need to add the next lot of lines. So this is called scoring. So once you've added your lines on both pieces, we're going to need something called slip. But we can make slip just by adding water to your piece. You can do that by just tapping the water into those score lines and then rotating your hand or your finger into those score lines, and you can see that the water doesn't look like water anymore. This is called slip. So slip is literally just water and clay mixed together, and it acts like a clay glue. If you're using if you're going to fire your piece, you can also add vinegar to this. So you can add, like, you can make a little jar or pot of slip. You can add water, bits of clay, and then vinegar, and just mix it together, and that will also make slip. And then I'm going to do it to this piece as well to make sure it's got a nice strong bond. And then just to be sure, I'm going to add a few more lines on both, just so that when I add my pieces together, they fully attach. So I'm going to support the inside of my pot and just put my piece that I'm attaching directly on top and just give it a few pushes down. And that's a nice secure hold. So if I try to shake it off, that ain't coming off. So to get this sort of blended look, so the face sort of blends nicely into the rest of the pot, I used my blending tool. But again, if you aren't buying your tools, you can use your fork and just push down on the sides a little, just a little bit, and then you can use the other end of your fork to blend those lines, and then just use your fingers then to smooth out those marks. So it's easy to do with some tools that you've got in your kitchen, but I find that sometimes wooden tools are better because metal and plastic can kind of stick to your clay sometimes, but you know, you can make do 100%. So just using this blending tool, the kind of fork end, and then on the top as well, and then using the other end of the blending tool to get rid of those lines. And then using my finger, maybe with a little bit of water because it's starting to feel a little bit dry, to smooth out everything. And then because this nose is face rather, is looking a bit protruding, I don't know what the word is, it's sticking out a bit too much, I'm just gonna squish it down a little, just so it looks a little bit less intense. And then spend a bit more time smoothing everything out. The more time, I will say this, the more time you spend smoothing things out, the more defined your piece looks, or more, I don't know if professional is the right word, because the goal isn't for it to look professional, because we're just having fun at the end of the day. But sometimes not smoothing things out can leave lots of like lumps and bumps, and then some people think like, oh, I'd like to, you know, have it look smoother. You just need to spend a bit more time, and that's it. That's literally the secret to it. You just spend a bit more extra time smoothing things out, and then just adding a teeny bit of water if you're finding that things aren't smoothing out properly. So you can see here now that this shape is looking a bit more like this shape. So next I'm going to add his little nose. No, I'm going to add his little sort of connecty bit of the nose and the mouth. So to do that, I used a needle tool to just draw a straight line going down, and then a little mouth shape. And then you can see here, this is what I was talking about, these like sort of jaggedy looking lines. You can get rid of those again with a little bit of water to smooth them out, and then go back over those lines. Oh, I was using this end. It might be helpful as well to clean off your tools from time to time. It just helps with getting like defined lines and like shapes and things. I think I'm somewhat happy with this. It's not quite the smile I was looking for, but it'll do for now. I can always refine it later. So next I'm going to add his little nose. So I'm going to use just a small amount of clay, just about this much, and then I'm going to make it into a ball shape, rolling it in between my hands. And then I'm going to kind of make like this sort of triangle-ish shape. And I can do that by my thumb and 2 fingers and just pushing down, and then sort of like pushing each side to make that sort of triangle. And then underneath and on top, squish it down a little. And then the same again. Triangle shape, push it down. And then it's got like a rough, rounded, triangle-y shape. So again, when adding clay to clay, you're going to need to flatten one side just a little bit. And then add some score lines. Figure out where exactly you want to put your piece. I'm just going to shape this a little bit. So I want my little nose to go here, I think. That works. And then you can see this is where I need to do my score lines for his nose. And then same as before, add a little bit of water to create slip on both pieces. And then I'm gonna re-add my score lines. And I'm going to attach his nose just by pushing down. Again, supporting the walls on the inside while you're pushing down. I feel like this nose might be a little bit big, but that's okay. They're going to be cousins and not twins. Okay, so next we are going to add his little ears. So same as before, little ball shapes. Maybe that's a bit too much clay. You can kind of rough out like how much you kind of want to use before deciding. So I want to take a little bit off, so that's like the rough kind of guide. So that's kind of what I want for both ears. So before I attach this ear, I'm gonna try and grab the same amount of clay. And if I haven't grabbed the same amount, you can see this one is a bit smaller. I'll add a little bit more. Still seems a little bit small, so I'm just gonna add a teensy bit more. That seems more equal now. So again, when clay starts to like dry up on your hands, just remember you can wash it off. You can leave it on 100%. You don't have to wash your hands every time. Some people find it frustrating having to wash their hands every 2 minutes. And they're not that bothered by the marks that are left in the clay, whereas I do quite like the smoothness that like my fresh clean hands have on my piece throughout, so I do try my best to clean them. So to form the ear shape, I'm just gonna make my ball a little bit flatter, and then I'm gonna try and indent a little bit. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here. So just pushing like the tip of my thumb up into the ball. It's like down and up, down and up. So it starts to make that kind of ear shape. Oh, my camera stopped recording there. So you can see some of my clay has like folded on itself. So you can use one of your tools to just blend it out if that happens to you as well. So it might be helpful to put your two ears side by side so you can kind of shape them at the same time once you've got like that initial ear shape. And then I'm going to add mine to obviously the top of the pot so you can see it like this. So I need to flatten the base of the ears so that I've got something to attach my pieces to. And same again, we're going to score the parts that we're adding. And I'm going to do both at the same time so I can figure out the placement of both. So just so you can see what I'm doing, I think I don't want them too close, but I also don't want them too far. So where did I do them on this one? I did them pretty much just where this part ends. That's where the ears began. So I'm going to do that again. So like this part of the face, it ends here. So I might just add my ears right here. So again, little push down, little push down. It would be easier to just push it up now. And now I know where to put my score lines. So I can add my score lines here. And then add my water to make my slip. And then same on the ears. But this time I'm going to do one at a time. And then same on this ear. And then you can see that my ears here on this pot, they are blended seamlessly into the pot, whereas on this you can see that there's a clear line. If you're going something for a bit more like a mouse shape, maybe you like that sort of line, who knows. So you can definitely leave it as is, but whenever you blend clay, whenever you attach clay to clay and then blend it, it's just a stronger bond. But this definitely is going to hold because you've just made that slip. But just to strengthen it, that's when we do a little bit of blending. So you can again use your blending tool, you can use your fork, or you can skip those and use a sort of pointy wooden knife tool, or you can definitely use a butter knife as well. So I'm going to show you with a butter knife just so I can show you that it is achievable using your kitchen utensils. You can blend the clay up from the pot into the ear, or you can kind of blend the clay from the ear down to the pot. So it looks a bit messy, but you can then use a little bit of water to smooth things out. So you can definitely use kitchen tools, but it is a little bit cumbersome when you get to certain parts versus a wooden tool with like a pointy edge. So when I go to blend the clay in between the ears, I find that it's a little bit easier having a smaller tool. So you can also reshape your clay as well. Once you've blended those that line out, you can like push the ears in to make them a bit longer or a bit less wide. So you don't have to stick to the initial shape that you initially made. It is also helpful, actually, I didn't include this in the things you should have, but a paintbrush is also useful. You can dip it in your water and then dab off the excess on your sponge, and this can help you smooth out any blending lines in places that your finger is like maybe too bulky to get into. So like a sharp corner, obviously our fingers aren't sharp on the edges, so a paintbrush is definitely really helpful for that part. But again, not something that is required. You can just get away with like slightly uneven edges. And then I'm going to do the same then to this part, or this ear. Do you know what's kind of funny? As I've been explaining what to do with the ears, I'm saying the word ears, but I'm Welsh. I usually say years, but I just wanted to avoid some confusion. So I am gonna continue to use the word years. I'm owning up to the fact that I am Welsh. I'm Welsh and I'm proud. Hello. So I'm not gonna say ears anymore. I just wanted to, you know, help avoid some confusion. These are my years. And they are 3 years old over by year. I love being Welsh. Okay, so you can just spend a bit of time now smoothing out that join. Maybe not add as much as water as I just did, but I'm going to spread it around a little. Okay, and then for the eyes, they were really simple. So the eyes on my little bear pot, I just added 2 little dots. So that's exactly what I'm going to do on this one. And I did that with the needle tool. So I'm just going to pop one eye right here. And I just rotated the tool a little, and then one eye right here. You can decide how big you want the eyes to be by how deep you go in with the needle tool. You can also use the thinner end of the needle tool as well. But I quite like the bigger eye look. Because clay as well, I should mention, it also shrinks a little bit as it dries. Not massively, but those little holes will get a little bit smaller. So now, if you want to add texture to your bear once it's dried by adding paint, you're more than welcome to just leave it as is. But if you want to add a bit of texture using some of the tools, you can definitely do that with this ribbon tool. So I used just the corner of this ribbon tool, and I supported the inside of the walls, and I just carved little marks. And then you can see here, when you carve away the clay, sometimes it remains on the clay, so just try and take it off, and then you can just sort of add it onto your sponge as you're working. So you can just do this over and over to add that texture, or you can use your needle tool to make finer lines. It's a little bit faster with the needle tool. You could also add lots of like sort of scruffier lines. So I'll do that on the back by adding multiple, if I support the walls it's probably a bit easier. By adding multiple marks, you can get that kind of scruffier fur look. And you can also leave all of those bits of clay on there to add to the texture. So I quite like this look, so I'm going to maybe use the fork for my one. But you can definitely use the ribbon tool or the needle tool to add your sort of fur texture. It depends how quick, I guess, you want your piece to be finished, because obviously this is adding multiple lines at the same time, whereas the needle tool, the ribbon tool is a little bit slow, the needle tool is a little bit faster, and then this is faster again. And because obviously I'm doing this for a video, I want it to be relatively fast so that you're not having to sit through me adding the texture to my pot. And then I think that might be done, you know. Maybe I'll add a few extra bits. So I'm going all the way to the bottom of my pot. And I might go up a little bit as well. So that's my second bear pot. So you can see the difference in texture that two different tools make, but still achieving somewhat the same result. So just a little reminder, before you go to decorate your pot, if you're using air dry clay, I should mention, if you're using air dry clay, you need to wait for your clay to fully dry, just like this one, so the color changes, before adding maybe acrylic paint or going in with a sealant like PVA glue, Mod Podge. You can buy specific sealants. I know some people use UV resin, or a combination of those two. You can add acrylic paint and a PVA glue, acrylic paint and UV resin. If you are going to fire your piece, so say you've used a stoneware or an earthenware clay, you can definitely add underglaze now, or you could add underglaze before you start carving away, because then that's a little bit of like a sgraffito sort of look. But you can definitely add underglaze at this stage, or you can leave it to this stage where it's bone dry and then add underglaze. Or you can fire it after it's bone dry and then add glazes when it's been bisqued. So there's a few ways you can decorate your piece if it's being fired, and there's a few ways you can decorate your piece if it's just air dry clay. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Actually, I'm going to change the camera angle. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and making a cute little bear pot with me. If you have any questions, please feel free to pop me a comment. I'll try my best to get back to you ASAP. ASAP sounds so weird. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you have any requests for pinch pot animals, I'm a little bit of a fan of a pinch pot animal. I don't know what it is. I've got a whole bunch of ideas, or I did somewhere, of pinch pot animals that I want to try out. So if there's any of these sort of like jump out of you, please let me know. If you'd like to see other types of pinch pots, I think I did another spread in my sketchbook. Also, do you like my sketchbook? It's a triangle. But yeah, if you like the idea of me showing you how to make any of these kind of pinch pots or something else out of clay, I do really enjoy hand building. I'm still like relatively new to the potter's wheel, although I am getting better. I will say that. I will toot my own horn. I am getting better. Like I made this the other day. Look how nice that is. Yeah, I'm done showing off. But yeah, if you've got any requests, please let me know, and I will try to do another tutorial very soon. So, see you in the next one, I guess, chaps. Bye. Is that not focusing? Why is it not focusing? Motherfucker. I'm going to show you. It's just going to tear a bunch. So I'm going to show you video. This is so weird. I don't know. Something a bit like this. Something like this. A bit like this. What do you mean a bit like this? Do I leave that in? Make something a little bit more scrolls. Something a little bit more like this. Little bit more like this. You can do a lot. See, I've lost my train of thought and now I feel weird. Okay, testing without a microphone attached, because testing with a microphone attached was actually atrocious. So this is just test. Testing. I want to talk about pottery. I want to talk about pottery. Do I hold it? That's lame.